Ladies and gentlemen, even God couldn't save you if you were flying in and out of the Delhi airport this weekend. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just stay with us. Yes, it was very cold. Very, very cold, in fact. Yes, it was foggy. Very, very foggy. But did it have to end in pure torture for passengers? That is a question that airlines, especially Air India and Indigo, have to answer. These are paying customers, no freeloaders you're dealing with here. These are people who keep you flying. And yet you think it's kosher to lock them up in an aircraft for 8 hours? Yet you think it's okay for you to keep them hanging at airports for 17 hours without information? Ladies and gentlemen, everyone understands a plane cannot fly if there is zero visibility. But I fail to understand why airlines and their staff cannot be honest with passengers, why they cannot communicate the real picture. Will a passenger ask you to fly if he or she knows that flying in the fog is a risk to his or her life? No, they won't. They're not stupid. But what has passengers fuming today, ladies and gentlemen, is the complete mismanagement by a caustic and uncommunicative crew. That anger is spilling on the internet with passengers tweeting videos of chaos and delays. Some of them are on your screens. A Delhi-Mumbai flight delayed for 17 hours. Can you imagine that, ladies and gentlemen? 17 hours. A Delhi-Vancouver flight where passengers were locked up in a plane for 8 hours. 8 hours. But the video that has gone viral is from a Delhi-Goa flight that was delayed for 13 hours. Passengers had been in that flight for over 10 hours, inside, locked. When the first officer of the flight came to announce yet another delay, tempers flew. One passenger, on your screens there, got up and slapped the pilot. Now, there is absolutely no justification for what the passenger did. There is absolutely no justification for it. But, ladies and gentlemen, there is also no justification for how airlines, whether it is Air India or Indigo, have dealt with passengers in the last 48 hours. First, a look at that viral video.
Please, let's not turn up. You are lying. नहीं चलाना मत चला खोल हम कितनी देर से बैठे
Now, needless to say, as is procedure, the passenger has been put on a no-fly list. But the slap really is on Indigo's on-time reputation. And ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't just Indigo. Let me show you another video that an Air India passenger has tweeted. This is from inside a Delhi-Mumbai flight, which was delayed, just hold your breath. It was delayed by over 17 hours. Passengers were made to board the flight and then wait, and wait, and wait for 6 hours. They complained of claustrophobia, but to no avail. Just take a look. This is how crazy it got. An Indigo flight from Goa to Delhi was late by 12 hours. Forget that. It got diverted to Mumbai because, well, Delhi was fogged out. So fed-up passengers simply decided to sit on the Mumbai tarmac for a meal. There they are. That picture and that video going viral as well. Just take a look at these. Ladies and gentlemen, these are all paying passengers. And no one can blame this aviation mess on the fog. Fact is, India does not have enough pilots trained to take off and land in foggy conditions. That is a reality. Fact is, of Delhi's 4th runway right now is not operational. This is a Cat 3 enabled one, which means during fog season, there is only one runway in Delhi that can actually be used right now. And fact also is that our airlines are terrible at communicating with passengers. Instead of all the money they spend on advertising, they should probably spend that money training their crew on how to deal with passengers. Again, nothing justifies a passenger slapping a pilot. But nothing justifies this shoddiness on the part of airlines as well. The Civil Aviation Ministry, as always, woke up after passenger anger spilled online and hit headlines. The minister blamed it on the fog. He called it unprecedented. He asked passengers for their patience. And he also promised SOPs for airlines to deal with these challenges a little better. Promptly after that, the DGCA, after 48 hours of chaos, did issue guidelines. And those guidelines have just come barely 10 minutes ago. These guidelines that the DGCA has issued after the chaos has taken place mandate airlines to publish accurate real-time information regarding delays. It also is asking airlines to cancel flights that are likely to face inordinate delay. So if you know that a flight is going to get delayed for multiple reasons, simply cancel it, they say, and advance and tell your passengers in advance. To me, all of this is a bit like Hindi film police that always arrives at the crime of the scene late, never on time, but late. So the DGCA's reaction and the reaction, ladies and gentlemen, of the Aviation Ministry, too little, too late is what we'll say. My guest this evening, Jitendra Bhargav, is a former ED at Air India, joining us on the broadcast. Kushal Kumbhat is MD Urbana Group, someone who's had to deal with not just inordinate delays, but also a lot of lies. Lloyd Matthias, again, someone who we were inviting for our 8:30 p.m. show, which is on Sachin Tendulkar and the deep fakes, till he told us that he too was delayed for 9 hours. But before all of that, I'm going across to Ranveer Shori, who's joining us on the broadcast. Ranveer's flight delayed by over 10 hours. Ranveer Shori, today we have a statement from the Aviation Ministry. They are saying this is because of the fog. The fog is unprecedented and it is asking passengers like you to have some patience. Do you buy what the Aviation Ministry is telling you today?
Not really, Shreya, because I think something is, very basically wrong. Because for passengers who are traveling from Bangalore to Mumbai, both places don't have fog. Why should we be suffering for fog in Delhi? This is something which I have spoken to with the airline, which we had a bad experience with yesterday too. I think we need to think that we need to localize when there is a problem. It needs to be localized. That okay, if there's fog in Delhi, then flights from to and from Delhi are suffering. I can understand that. But if there's fog in Delhi, an airline using that as an excuse to delay and leave passengers in a lurch across the country doesn't sound right to me.
Could you tell our viewers what exactly happened? I've seen your tweet, but I'm assuming most viewers haven't. Could you just tell our viewers what happened?
I think it'll be easier if people just go read it on X, but I'll try to give you the short version. Our flight was scheduled for 2 p.m. We got there in time, well before time, before noon. After we checked in, we were told flight is 3 hours late. We were not informed, as passengers via SMS or any such thing. But we thought, okay, maybe because there are so many of 8 of us traveling together, that there was some communication problem and they could not. And we understand at this time of the year, there are delays because of fog and all. So we took it in our stride. We settled down, and so the scheduled time became 5 p.m. And then around 3 p.m. they told us no, now it's 8 p.m. And my child was alone at home because I was expected to be back home by 4-5 p.m. I went to the so we got a little it sounded a little suspect. So one of my friends kind of looked up on the airline website, and it showed the routing of the aircraft which was supposed to take us from Bangalore to Mumbai. And she saw that actually our aircraft was supposed to come from Kolkata, and it's already landed. So when we confronted the airline personnel with that, they just kind of made some calls and said, no, the website has not been updated properly. It is because of fog. And because this is what they had been telling us so far. So we said, okay, fine, it sounds a little fishy, but okay, as long as you promise me that it will take off at 8, around 8. He said, no, I take personal guarantee that by 8 p.m. it will take off. So I made arrangements a little bit that I had to for my child at home. And I said, okay, it will take off at 8 o'clock. And then at about 6 again, they started changing it. They said, now it's 9 o'clock. And I started panicking because I have to be back home for my kid. And so then I went and, the first time I kept quiet. I said, okay, it's just an hour. I somehow managed. I spoke to my caretaker at home and I managed. And then they say it's going to be 10 p.m. So then by then I lost my cool because this was now things had exploded because I have responsibilities, I have a schedule, I have a plan which I'm following, and I can understand a domestic flight being delayed in number of hours. But when you're talking half a day, now you're talking in scales which are of completely different mode of travel. Trains and road travel is where you can see these kind of delays where they're okay, half a day is gone. But in a domestic, in a domestic flight to have half a day of gone, that throws a lot of things out of gear for not just for me, for a lot of people. Bangalore airport was full of people who were traumatized, not just me. So I mean, if you look up on social media for yesterday, I think it must have been a particularly bad day for this particular airline. Anyway, to come back to my story, so at 10:10, finally, when I appealed, they sent that guy who had promised me a personal guarantee guy disappeared from the airport, stuck me onto a new guy who again tried the same, platitudes and lies with me again. So I told him, don't do this to me now again, because earlier guys already tried this with me. So I need to know the reason, because it can't be fog now. After 6-8 hours, it can't be fog. Where's the fog? So then he made some calls. I appealed to his humanity, and that please, at least don't lose your personal integrity just being a company mouthpiece. So he made a few calls, and then he came out with the truth, which they didn't have a pilot. They had no pilot. They had the aircraft. They didn't have the pilots. And then he also started same thing. Okay, now in 20 minutes, pilot has been assigned. Then half an hour later, no, I didn't say pilot has been assigned. I said pilot is being assigned. So these kind of silly, stupid games they are playing, all under the umbrella of operational reasons. When they write to you on social media and say flight is delayed due to operational reasons, this is an umbrella under which so much they get away with. I want the Civil Aviation Ministry and the authorities to address this. These people are taking us for a ride. And anyway, basically, to cut a long story short, a flight which was supposed to leave at 2 p.m. left at midnight. I got home at about 3 in the night. Now, I luckily have good help at home. But can you imagine a single parent who doesn't have help, what they would have gone through?
So, Ranveer, the problem is the flight delay, but the bigger problem you're telling me is the sort of communication that you were having with the airline staff, with the crew, who simply refused to tell the truth.
Yeah, it is the lies which gets to you finally. I mean, if they had told me at 2 p.m., okay, because of operational reasons, we are going to not be able to fly for another 12 hours, I would have I would have figured out something else. Maybe taken a flight with another airline, although I did check that out. And trust me, how it works is that if one airline is going through this, suddenly you'll see the rates of the other airlines shoot up. Like yesterday, Bengaluru, Mumbai, when this crisis started, it reached like 30,000 rupees for an economy seat. So if you are in trouble, when they know that, okay, this one sector, this airline is going through, the other airline is not going to be, just sitting back taking their passengers. They're going to, kick up their prices. So anyway, my point is, if they had told me earlier and they were transparent and truthful about it, even if not anything else, one wouldn't be so agitated or so aggrieved, or so pissed off, frankly. But to slowly, it's like leading a dog with a biscuit. Okay, 3 hours now, then 3 more hours, then 3 more hours, and all the while lying under the umbrella of, oh no, because there was fog in Delhi, and then you find out it had nothing to do with the fog because the aircraft was already there, and then it becomes it's operational reasons, and then you find out the operational reasons are that you don't have a pilot. Then why are you booking tickets if you don't have pilots?
Okay. Ranveer, I saw one tweet where you said at this point of time, you don't blame that one passenger of the Indigo flight for slapping the pilot who was making announcement on delays. Do you still stand by that tweet?
No. I never said that. I never said that I don't blame him, or I was just making fun of it because, frankly, listen, Shreya, I mean, I abhor violence. I do not condone it. I condemn it completely, and that guy, should be penalized. But when he's penalized by whatever authority, court or whatever, it should be taken into account that he was trapped in a metal box for 13 hours and these people were just lying through their teeth to him. That should be taken into account. I mean, what would you do if I locked you in a room at the at the promise of transporting you to another city? I lock you up for 10 hours and every time, just feeding you lies. Oh no, now this has happened, now this has happened. And you have no way of checking whether all that is true or no. And finally, and inevitably turns out not to be true.
Ranveer.
I mean, I'm sure if for my particular flight, if DGCA were to audit that, what happened, I'm sure they will find there was no fog issue related directly at all. Because our aircraft was scheduled on their own website, was scheduled to come from Kolkata. There are no fog issues in Kolkata. There are no fog issues in Bangalore. There are no fog issues in Mumbai. Why am I suffering for fog in Delhi?
The DGCA has to tell us, and the Civil Aviation Ministry has to be upfront and honest, because today they have blamed everything on the fog. In fact, they are saying this was unprecedented fog because of which we saw what we did. We'll leave it there.
One last thing I want to say.
I understand why you are saying that isn't true. Yeah.
I think instead of the fog, Civil Aviation Ministry should not just focus on expanding the numbers, which is very good with that they're doing, that they want to expand the numbers of people taking, using air travel. But they also need to focus on the quality of services being provided along with the numbers. And redressal systems.
We'll leave it there for the moment, Ranveer. Thank you.
Competent redressal systems.
Thank you. And compensation. Thanks, Ranveer. Thank you for sharing your experience with us here on Mirror Now. Jitendra Bhargav, you're joining us speaking on behalf of the aviation industry. You've been on this show multiple times giving us the point of view of airlines. Please help me understand how we can justify what we have seen. Not the fog-related delays, not the chaos, but the lies and the lies and the lies that are fished out to passengers.
Okay, you will again say that, look, I'm trying to defend the airline, but let me give you the operational constraints out of experience that one has. When he says, for example, that in Kolkata, Bangalore, Mumbai, there was no fog, he overlooks the fact that aircraft moves from Delhi to Calcutta or Delhi to Bangalore to operate the next leg of the flight. So if the Delhi flight gets delayed, it happens, consequent delays take place. It's a reality. Number two, he says they were speaking lies. They were not giving him the factual position. Let me tell you, when you are at the airport and one airline has 4 flights to handle, which have all got delayed, the aircraft movement, FDTL of pilots, all things have to be taken into consideration, because if flight is delayed, the pilot can operate one leg and the aircraft gets stranded there. Airlines are looking for the total operations. A passenger is looking for his specific flight. Now, these are kind of constraints that we look at, and my advice, suggestion to you would be that let the fog get over. Let's have a Q&A suggestion, question answers, only on the operational constraint that passengers need to appreciate. Now, when you talk of delays kind of thinking, Minister is not wrong when he says unprecedented fog. Look at the visibility that Delhi had yesterday. You have number of aircraft parked in Delhi, which means there is shortage of aircraft in the rest of the country. You can land, but you can't take off, which means more people have got into the terminal building, but people have not exited. So which means that passengers are on an aircraft, and the rule is that when you are getting onto an aircraft, you have boarded the passenger, but fog is setting, you can't take off. Now, the options are deboard the passengers and board them again. But the fact is, fog can clear in 15, 20 minutes. Nobody can predict. Can you take the drill of 2 hours again to get a flight and delay it? So you take an optimistic view in an airline and say, look, if the thing clears it, I'll take off. Delhi is a typical case you got to look at. India's biggest flight operators, 1,000 flights a day being operated. Now, every airline at any hour has 10 to 12 flights on ground, ready for takeoff, being handled by the check-in staff, baggage handlers, pilots coming in, and everyone looking at it. How do you manage those things? Should I make the flight to Calcutta go because Kolkata next leg is Assam where there's only one frequency being operated? Should I make the flight go to Mumbai because the international passenger being connected out of that place? There are umpteen factors that an airline looks at. But where you can fault the airline is communications. Explain to them the rationale.
Correct.
Don't lead them to the path of giving the optimistic view. Tell them optimistically, we will probably take
Correct.
2 hours, but this is 4 hours that we take on. And the staff at the airport is certainly not privy to the information, something that they need to be told, kept abreast, so the passengers who are interacting
Mr.
with
Bhargav,
the interfacing
Mr.
staff
Bhargav.
can give the real picture.
ठीक है, ठीक है, ठीक है. Okay, I've heard you out, Mr. Bhargav. Two things. The Aviation Ministry has called the fog unprecedented, and you concur. You're saying they're right. But the fact is that the fog over the weekend was not unprecedented. We saw the same fog on December 25th, 24th and 25th. You remember that weekend? Because both of us chatted over that weekend as well, when there was complete chaos at Delhi's airports. So this fog we saw on 24th and 25th is what we saw over this weekend as well. So to say that this fog is unprecedented, it is not unprecedented. Yes, I understand. If visibility is zero, no flight can take off. I understand that. But please don't say, fog के season में तो fog ही आएगा ना?
नहीं.
Does it mean that you will harass your passengers the way that you have harassed them?
No, Shreya, please listen to me for a moment. You can have fog from 11 a.m. till 2 o'clock in the afternoon when there are lesser number of flights. Yesterday's fog was from 5 o'clock onwards, which is the peak time. So you got to look at the number of flights that have got impacted because of fog, and then terminology to be used as unprecedented or not unprecedented, or it was a mild kind of fog, etc., etc. Look at the number of flights that got impacted. Because early morning fog, what happens is, has a chain cascading reaction. A flight that does not leave at 5 o'clock, the aircraft gets delayed. Countrywide, it has its impact on that day. That's perhaps the reason why the minister described it
if
as
you know flights are going to get delayed, Mr. Bhargav, if you know flights are going to get delayed by 12 hours, 13 hours, 17 hours, simply cancel those flights. Today, that is the guideline that the DGCA has issued. But it doesn't take a genius mind to figure out your passengers are going to be at the airport for 17 hours. Rather than make them go through that hell, you might as well cancel the flight and let them know early in advance. Anyhow, let me get to two people, who are not just professionals, urban professionals, but they are also people who've had to suffer 9-hour delays and 10-hour delays. Kaushal Kumbat, you've just heard what Mr. Bhargav has said in defense of airlines. Do you buy what he's saying?
No, I do not. Shreya, the ordeal that my son suffered started here in Calcutta on the 13th. On 13th, I have checked. The fog situation wasn't as bad, and it was only in the morning. So there was no reason for a 9 o'clock flight to get delayed to 11 o'clock from Calcutta. That's where it started. After that, when he got to Delhi and he was flying to Istanbul, the airline staff kept saying, yes, the flight's on time. It'll take off at 6:15. When my son was calling me and saying he can't see the aircraft at all, it was so foggy. So how could it ever have taken off at 6:15? In any event, they made him board at 6:30, and then they kept him in the flight till 11:45. 5.5 hours. Post which, when they got down also, they were told to go to the baggage carousel, get their bags. The bags came after 3 hours, in some cases after 4 hours. There was so much chaos. My son says that there was a young father with a 5-year-old son who wanted insulin because the insulin was in the luggage, and he was not able to access it because the luggage came 4 hours later. Now, these kind of things you certainly cannot blame on fog. You cannot blame the fact that 4 hours, it takes you 4 hours to get bags for passengers after you've deplaned them after a 6-hour ordeal. And this particular flight is a litany of misinformation. So first the airline staff said, we have no clue whether we can send you tomorrow or not on the sector. And they were giving you hotel vouchers. There were passengers who were taken to the hotel at 4 o'clock. 5 o'clock, the airline sends them a notification saying, we've scheduled a special flight. Please come back to the airport at 6. The passengers run back within 2 hours to the airport. Once they reach the airport, they're told the flight has been delayed to 12:30 and eventually delayed to 4:30. I have another passenger on the same flight who tweeted to me personally saying she was traveling with a 2-year-old and it took her 37 hours end to end at the airport before she could take off. 37 hours. What kind of fog situation, what kind of delays would justify a 37-hour ordeal with a 2-year-old kid?
Jitendra Bhargav,
So no,
आप ही
I do
जवाब दे
not buy
दीजिए.
what Mr. Bhargav is
Jitendra
saying.
Bhargav, very
Again,
quick,
as I said, it is essential to
Mr.
know how an
Bhargav, just-
airline operates.
please.
Because when he says that the baggage delivery took
Mr.
so much time and
Mr.
therefore you
Bhargav,
can't.
it is not essential for a passenger to know how an airline operates. It's essential for a paying customer to
People
get the
have to be
service that he or she is
appreciative.
paying for. It
People
is
have
not
to be
my business.
appreciative.
No. And airlines
no.
have to appreciate that we are paying
Priya,
customers
in
and we
normal
don't
situation-
deserve
Priya, may
to
I-
get
may I
onto a
interrupt
flight
for a second,
37
Priya?
hours after it is supposed to take off. Yeah, go ahead.
Priya,
Mr.
in
Bhargav,
normal
give me a second. I
says
think
it is
Kaushal
important
wants
for
to say something.
passengers to know.
In normal
it is
situation,
important for
I'm
passengers
the
to know how
airline,
flights
if they
operate.
treat a passenger
When
in
the
this manner.
airlines,
But when you talk of baggage delivery
Ek minute,
taking
Mr.
time,
Bhargav.
please
Ek
remember
minute.
the number of baggages
minute.
being handled of various
Haan.
air flights is enormous, 5 times the usual number.
Haan.
Can you get the requisite staff? Can you get the requisite number of conveyor belts
No,
increased all of a sudden to
So
cope with an
passengers
increased
are
load?
supposed to be. Passengers are supposed to do all the
Appreciative.
understanding. The airlines are not. Kaushal wants to come back. No, sir. And
Yeah,
and
so I
airlines
just-
need to
I
appreciate
just-
that we are paying passengers as well, and we
I'm
don't need to
surprised
be
that
treated
Mr.
like this.
Bhargav
Kaushal, go ahead.
I'm surprised that Mr. Bhargav wants passengers to understand how flights operate, but he's completely silent on the fact that airlines will not give you 2 minutes. If you're delayed by 2 minutes at the check-in counter, you're offloaded, your baggage is not taken in. If you have 1 kg of extra baggage, you're charged 550 rupees or 600 rupees. I have another tweet from a gentleman who was flying to Doha, where Indigo told him that, on international flights, additional baggage is charged at $40 per kg. So for 15 kgs, he ended up paying 57,000 rupees on a ticket which had cost him 64,000 rupees. So the airline is not responsible to understand anything that a passenger has, any issue that a passenger has, but the passenger is supposed to appreciate everything that the airline goes through. That's a funny way of, treating a paying customer.
Lloyd Matthias, would you want to come in here? Again, someone whose flight was delayed by over 9 hours. You heard what Mr. Bhargav is saying. Appreciate the challenges that an airline faces.
You still don't want
Mr.
to
Bhargav,
appreciate the
let me
constraints.
hear
Put
Lloyd.
yourself as the airport manager to deal with the situation, and you will change your view immediately and say, my God, how am I going to handle 5,000 passengers when I handle only 1,000 passengers? Look at the constraints at the airport.
So, bhaiya,
It has
put
nothing
two
to do
more.
with it. It's
So
a
put two
situation
more
that I'm talking about.
managers at the
When
Delhi
you have
airport.
umpteen number of
If
flights
one guy
delayed at
cannot
the
put
same
it,
time
put 3.
for a factor beyond the control of an airline.
Thanks,
This
Shreya.
was not
Mr. Bhargav,
beyond the
I just
control
want to
of
make
an
a couple of
airline.
points.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Lloyd. Go ahead.
So I was on a 7:30 p.m. flight from Bangalore to Delhi that event had the baggage on the belt at 7 a.m. this morning, right? So I understand the fog issue, and I get a lot of the context of what Mr. Bhargav is saying. I think the 2 points that we are not addressing here, Shreya, and which is critical, I think one is that Indian aviation has now become a comfortable duopoly. There are 2 basic groups, the Tata group with Air India and Vistara, and Indigo. So there's a sense of the fact that you have no choice. You really don't have much of a choice. The second thing, and I think something Mr. Bhargav hasn't spoken about, is that airline crew need to communicate. They need to have basic lessons to tell passengers the current status. I think that is a critical part. The third part, which again Mr. Bhargav hasn't spoken about, is that fog is an annual occurrence. Fog doesn't descend on Delhi out of the blue. It happens every December and January. You have what is called Category 3 landing systems, ILS. Why was that not operational, right? So this is an annual occurrence. It's not happening for the first time, right? That is a big issue. Other problem very clearly is that airlines fear they might lose their status in the queue. They put passengers in a flight and then close the doors and then wait forever. When they sense that there are 15 or 16 aircrafts piled on, they need to deplane passengers, fully knowing that passengers will have to go through another round of screening when they get back. So I think some of these core issues the airline industry has to tackle. And I do expect the Civil Aviation Ministry to play a key role. You can't take passengers for granted. Right now, just because there are 2 airlines, I think they're holding passengers to ransom, and that's completely unacceptable.
So, Jitendra Bhargav, I know I've interrupted you a lot of times. I will not interrupt you. You have 20 seconds to respond to all the charges that have been made today, not just by Ranveer, by the way, by Kushal as well, by Lloyd as well. You know, the basic problem, Mr. Bhargav, is this. You are asking us to appreciate the pressures under which an airline operates or an airport manager functions. You are not expecting them to appreciate the time and money that is being spent by a passenger, A. B, the bigger problem, and if you go through Twitter, the bigger problem, it seems, is not the delays, but the really shoddy communication, the lies they have been told over and over and over again. If you know a flight is delayed by 10 hours, let us know. If you know that a flight is going to be delayed by 17 hours, cancel it well in advance. Now, these are things that, A, as I said, should be SOP for every airline. Today, there are new guidelines that the DGCA has issued that say exactly this. ये तो basic है ना, Mr. Bhargav. Don't take your passenger for a ride.
Yeah.
झूठ मत बोलो
For
भाई
a
उससे.
moment,
सच बोलो and end the matter here.
No, hold it. Shreya, just for a moment, hold. That Indigo or Air India announces now that tomorrow the following flights stand cancelled because of the disruption caused by fog in the last 2 days. Look at the hue and cry that is made, and you'll be doing another program to question airline wisdom if cancelling flight and coming to a conclusion, as they say, better late than never, is to come out at, okay, that would have been a better proposition. At least I would have reached my destination 5 or 6 hours from now. It's a catch-22 situation from an airline industry. As I said earlier, fog is the main factor. No airline wants to inconvenience passengers. No airline wants to go for delays and departures and diversion of flights. It costs the airline a bomb. You can look from your perspective, I paid my fare to the airline. But look at the cost that an airline incurs when a flight gets disrupted. As one of the complainants said, hotel given to them. Now look at it, the fare between Kolkata to Delhi and the hotel tariff in Delhi that you get. So airlines end up paying out. So the last thing that they want to do is to get a flight delayed. They are working for passengers, and that's what we must be appreciating. When I keep repeating it, the constraints in normal situation hang the airline if they do not behave properly or give you proper service. But when you have an external constraint like fog, which causes widespread disruption, what do you do about it? In America last week, 2,700 flights got delayed, cancelled because of the snowstorm. A hue and cry was raised on it. Look at the newspapers in America. People saw it, that this is a natural thing beyond the control of the airline. So we got to bear it. What else can we do? Airlines are also helpless in such situations. You may think that I'm holding brief for airline, but that's the realistic situation. You can't look at it as a flight-specific situation. Look at in totality how an airline operates. And I beg people to say that let me be appreciative of the constraints under which flights get operated with everything adverse from going for the airline, like the fog, FDTL coming in. You've got pilots are there, but they are sitting on the aircraft. In the meantime, the duty time has come in. Get a replacement of pilots, as it happened on the flight on which the rogue passenger slapped the pilot, you know?
Okay. So I'm going to give the last word to the passengers on the show. 10 seconds to Kushal and 10 seconds to Lloyd. Kushal, Dr. Bhargav is telling me, today, if airlines announce cancellation of flights for tomorrow, saying there's fog, there's backlog, and we need to cancel these flights, there'll be another hue and cry. Passengers kabhi khushi nahi hote. They'll never be satisfied with what airlines do.
नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है. If you know in advance what is happening, you can make alternate arrangements. You know, a flight from Bombay to Goa, for example, is not a big deal. You know, if you cannot go by flight, you can take a train, you can drive across. People will at least have the option of making alternate arrangements if they have information. I can give you a personal instance where I reached the airport for a flight to Guwahati from Calcutta, and I was told that the flight has been cancelled 1.5 hours ago with no information. I got up at 4 in the morning for an 8:30 flight, got to the airport at 6:30, and I was told that the flight has already been cancelled. These kind of situations cannot be the result of external constraints, as Mr. Bhargav is pointing out. These are just operational apathy, operational negligence on the part of the airlines, which takes passengers for granted and holds them to ransom.
Lloyd, Matthias, last word to you. Do you want to say anything about the DGCA and the Aviation Ministry? they always wake up when things go viral on social media. You know, Saturday, no word from the DGCA or the Civil Aviation Ministry. Sunday, no word from the DGCA or the Civil Aviation Ministry. Sunday evening, as things burst out, as, you know, as these delays and Twitter videos start making headlines, suddenly everyone is waking up. There is a problem there as well.
Absolutely, Shreya. I think two parts. Like I said, one is I think there's a comfortable duopoly. Airlines really don't feel the pressure. Two is the complete lack of communication. The fact that there is poor or no communication by airline crew, both in the aircraft and the on-ground staff. Third is very poor preparation of what is an annual occurrence. Clearly, airlines can have a crisis management group where they work together, or at least accommodate passengers on each other's flights. That does not seem to be happening. So I think it's really taking passengers for granted, very, very poor customer orientation. And unfortunately, passengers have to face the brunt of this. I think that's something that the industry needs to do some soul searching. And DGCA and the Civil Aviation Ministry have some big answering to do to Indian consumers.
All right, we leave it there for the moment. Lloyd Matthys, thank you very much. Kushal Kumbat, thank you very much for joining us on the show. And Jitendra Bhargav, thank you very much for taking our arguments and taking our questions. Although this time, I really don't see why passengers should appreciate what airlines have to go through to operate flights in situations like the fog. I mean, that's not our job. Our job is to pay for a ticket and then be ensured that we have a safe flight home. Anyhow, we leave it there for the moment. I think all of you have made your points. Jitendra Bhargav, Kushal, and Lloyd, thank you very much. On that note, I'm slipping into a quick break on the show. There's more